was the Queen for a very long time. And although you kind of know that this might happen, you don't really think about it very much. Not least of all because the monarchy is about continuity.
The Balmoral dinner was meant to display unity, tradition, and royal calm. Instead, one glance from Princess Anne brought the entire gathering to a sudden halt. On Queen Camilla's hand rested the late Queen Elizabeth II's private signet ring, an object never intended to become decoration, leverage, or a symbol of borrowed authority. Anne did not whisper to an aide. She rose from her chair, faced Camilla directly, and ordered the dinner stopped. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. King Charles had arranged the evening to steady a family carrying months of tension. William and Catherine expected conversation, while Anne knew Balmoral was being used to prove the household could stand together. The signet ring, a personal seal used to authenticate correspondence, had never been ceremonial jewelry. It carried the weight of Elizabeth's judgment, discipline, and decisions made far from public view. Anne pushed back her chair, and every conversation died. She pointed toward Camilla's right hand and said the dinner would not continue until the Queen explained how the ring had reached her. Camilla froze beside her glass. She did not deny what she was wearing, yet she offered no answer. Charles looked from his wife to his sister and understood this was not family temper. A protected boundary had been crossed. William remained seated, but his silence was not calm. He watched Anne like a man realizing the past could be reshaped before he inherited the future. Catherine saw something more painful. This was not merely a fight over an heirloom. It was a struggle over memory, ownership, and whether Elizabeth's private authority was being reassigned without the family's knowledge. Anne then delivered the detail that changed everything. After the late monarch's death, the ring had been sealed under restricted family custody, meaning it could not be removed without approval from those chosen to protect her possessions. Camilla should never have been able to wear it unless someone had overridden those instructions. Charles finally asked where it came from. Camilla lowered her hand, looked toward him, and waited too long. That hesitation fractured the room more than any accusation. She knew who had delivered it, but she was not ready to say the name. As the family was separated into different rooms, Anne caught William before he left. Her voice was low, but her warning was unmistakable. The ring was only the visible part of a decision made without their consent. But to understand why Anne was willing to humiliate a queen at her own dinner, the people around that table, and what each feared losing, had to be understood. The ring did not carry the same meaning for everyone in the room. To Camilla, it appeared to represent acceptance. To Charles, it threatened the fragile peace he had spent years protecting. To William, it raised a question about the future of the crown. But for Anne, the meaning was painfully personal. She had watched her mother use that ring in private moments of duty, and she knew it had never been treated as an ordinary possession. Princess Anne had spent decades studying Queen Elizabeth's quiet discipline. She understood the difference between inherited responsibility and personal ambition, because she had watched her mother protect that line every day. The signet ring had been linked to private approvals and sealed correspondence, meaning messages confirmed through the monarch's personal authority. Anne knew it was never designed to make another royal appear more powerful. Camilla carried a different wound. Becoming queen had not ended the comparisons surrounding her. Elizabeth remained the standard of duty, while Diana's memory remained impossible to escape. The ring seemed to offer something no title had fully given her, a sign that she had finally been accepted inside the deepest circle of the monarchy. Now that symbol had become an accusation. Charles stood alone in a side room and rubbed his forehead. He asked the waiting aide to leave, then remained silent after the door closed. The king wanted to defend his wife, but he also knew his sister understood their mother's wishes better than almost anyone. Choosing Camilla too quickly could dishonor Elizabeth. Supporting Anne without listening could humiliate the woman beside him. William faced a darker possibility. The future king understood that a signet could authenticate private instructions, not merely decorate a hand. If Camilla had used it to approve household decisions, the act could appear to borrow authority, reserved for the sovereign. He needed to know whether she had worn the ring once, or whether it had already spoken in the king's name. Catherine suddenly remembered the sealed velvet case. Months earlier, during an inventory review, she had seen a handwritten restriction attached to it. The note stated that the ring could not be transferred without the agreement of Elizabeth's children. She told William in a private conversation, and his expression changed instantly. Anne then met Charles without staff present. She made one thing clear. She had not accused Camilla of theft. Her fear was more calculated. Someone inside the household may have altered the custody record, making an unauthorized transfer appear legitimate. Camilla sat alone in the library and slowly removed the ring. She placed it on the table, then stared at the pale mark left around her finger. What had made her feel chosen now made her feel exposed. William asked Catherine when she had last seen the original restriction. Her answer led them back to a private memorial ceremony, and to the moment this crisis had truly begun. The confrontation at dinner had not started that evening, because the first irreversible move had been made months earlier behind the closed doors of Windsor. Months before the Balmoral dinner, the royal family gathered for a private memorial marking what would have been Queen Elizabeth's birthday. There were no cameras, no public speeches, and no reason to expect conflict. Yet inside that quiet ceremony, Camilla made one request that changed the balance of trust within the family. Anne rejected it immediately. Charles refused to take sides, and one sealed case was removed from the room before anyone noticed what had disappeared. Prince Edward and Sophie joined William, Catherine, Anne, Charles, and Camilla to decide what should happen to several personal objects left by the late Queen. The gathering was private because these were not crown possessions, meaning items owned by the state and passed automatically between monarchs. They were Elizabeth's personal belongings, carrying family instructions that could not be ignored without changing her final wishes. Camilla watched as the signet ring was placed inside a velvet case, beside a short, handwritten restriction. The note stated that it must remain a family relic and could never be worn as a symbol of rank by any future consort. The Queen understood the wording. She also understood what it seemed to deny her. Camilla then turned to Charles and asked whether she might wear the ring at a future Commonwealth reception to show continuity. Anne answered before her brother could speak. No, that was never its purpose. The rejection landed in front of William, Catherine, Edward, and Sophie, and the silence that followed felt sharper than any argument. Camilla said nothing, but her expression hardened when Charles refused to confirm either woman's position. The king wanted peace, yet his silence left his wife feeling exposed and his sister feeling abandoned. William noticed the fracture. Catherine did too. Neither understood how far it would spread. Anne confronted Charles later without aides present. She warned him that emotional reassurance could not be purchased with their mother's possessions. He answered that Camilla had spent years waiting to be treated as part of the family. The princess replied that belonging gained through broken instructions would never feel real. Sophie later found Camilla standing alone beside the sealed case. The trusted confidant watched as the Queen touched the lid, but did not open it. Camilla then asked softly whether anyone could truly belong to a family that guarded every memory from her. Sophie had no easy answer, and that silence stayed with both women. After the memorial, a junior custodian received an order to move the case from the family archive into a restricted royal collection room. The authorization carried a code normally reserved for the king's private office. Weeks later, Catherine noticed that the written restriction had vanished from the inventory file, but she assumed it had been removed for preservation. Back at Balmoral, Anne finally understood the pattern. The dinner had reopened an old wound, but the missing instruction made it something darker. When she entered the library to face Camilla, she was no longer demanding the return of a ring. She was demanding the truth about who had rewritten the late queen's wishes. No aides were allowed inside. No private secretary stood between them. Princess Anne entered the Balmoral library, closed the door, and found Camilla waiting beside the ring. For several seconds, neither woman spoke. Then Anne asked a single question. "Who gave you permission?" Camilla's answer did not calm the crisis. It widened it, because she claimed the ring had been presented to her as a gift, personally approved by King Charles. Anne stepped closer, but did not raise her voice. She made the difference painfully clear. Camilla's position as queen gave her status beside the monarch, but it did not grant automatic ownership of Elizabeth's private possessions. Those objects were governed by written family restrictions, personal instructions controlling who could hold, wear, or transfer them. Royal rank could not erase those words. Camilla explained that the ring had arrived weeks earlier, inside the same velvet case used at Windsor. A short note stated that Charles wanted her to wear it at Balmoral, as a gesture of unity and recognition. The Queen had read the message twice. She had taken it as proof that the king had finally chosen to place her inside the family's deepest circle. Anne refused to let that answer stand. She reminded Camilla of the memorial argument and accused her of knowing the ring was already forbidden. The Queen's restraint finally cracked. She said she was tired of being expected to reject every symbol of belonging simply because another member of the family might disapprove. Camilla then spoke with years of pain behind every word. Elizabeth's memory, she said, had become a wall placed in front of her whenever acceptance came close. Anne answered without hesitation. Protecting a dead woman's clear wishes was not cruelty. Belonging could not be built by taking what had been deliberately withheld. Anne picked up the note and examined it carefully. The language sounded like Charles. The phrasing carried his familiar concern for unity. Yet the message lacked the handwritten closing he always used in deeply personal instructions. It carried the king's tone, but not his personal mark. Camilla admitted she had never asked Charles directly whether he sent it. A senior member of his household had delivered the case and treated the authorization as unquestionable. She had wanted to believe it too badly to challenge it. Anne placed the ring on the table and pushed it toward her. She ordered Camilla not to touch it again until Charles confirmed the truth. The Queen stopped it with one finger, then left it between them. Outside the library, William received an urgent message. The release code had come from the King's office, but Charles insisted he had never issued it. The question was no longer whether Camilla should have worn the ring, but who inside the monarchy possessed enough power to act in the king's name. King Charles had defended his household through scandal, division, and relentless public pressure. Yet the document placed before him at Balmoral presented a threat he could not dismiss. His own authorization code had been used to release the late Queen's signet ring, erase its restriction, and deliver it to Camilla. The order appeared legitimate in every detail. There was only one problem. Charles had never approved it, and someone close enough to understand his private system had counted on his silence. William joined Charles and Anne in the king's study, while Catherine remained with Camilla, determined to stop the family dispute from becoming a complete rupture. Access to protected royal possessions required several approvals. The collection custodian checked the object. The private secretary's office confirmed the instruction, and the sovereign's household gave final authority. The system existed to prevent one person from moving a treasured item in secret. Charles read the authorization twice. He set it down without speaking, but the pain in his face exposed what anger could not. This was not only an administrative breach. Someone had borrowed the king's authority, trusted his reluctance to cause scandal, and turned his loyalty to his wife into cover. Anne refused to soften the truth. She told her brother that his habit of protecting Camilla from every internal challenge had created a dangerous pattern. Staff had begun anticipating what he might want, instead of waiting for what he actually ordered. Charles resisted the accusation, but the princess pressed harder. Silence, she warned, could become permission in the hands of ambitious people. William examined the digital record and found the first hidden move. The authorization had been entered shortly after the Windsor Memorial, when the King's office was handling a flood of private correspondence. The timing allowed the transfer to disappear among legitimate instructions. William then uncovered something worse. The missing restriction had not been destroyed. It had been digitally reclassified under a private household category, meaning the collection team could no longer see it when checking the ring's release. Someone had not simply removed an obstacle, they had hidden it. Charles summoned his senior private secretary and asked one direct question. Had he approved the transfer? The man hesitated. The king slowly removed his glasses. "That delay has already answered me," he said. Charles suspended him from all private household duties and ordered a full review. He also declared that no object connected to Elizabeth could be moved without written approval from two of her children. The secretary turned before leaving and delivered one final warning. The ring was not the only item reclassified. Another transfer had already been prepared for announcement after the Balmoral dinner. By midnight, the halted dinner had become a full royal emergency, and Camilla was about to learn that the ring had placed far more than her reputation at risk. The signet ring had been on Camilla's hand for less than an hour, but its consequences spread through Balmoral before midnight. Her planned toast was cancelled. Her private staff were questioned. The gift that was meant to confirm her place within the family now made her appear complicit in an unauthorized seizure of Elizabeth's legacy. And when Charles finally entered her room, his expression revealed that he was not arriving as a protective husband alone. He was arriving as king. Charles had already cancelled the remainder of the dinner. Guests were told that an urgent household review had taken control of the evening, while staff removed untouched place settings and carried away speeches that would no longer be delivered. A household review meant a formal internal investigation into how royal orders were issued, recorded, and carried out. That mattered, because the breach now threatened the king's authority as much as Camilla's reputation. Catherine remained beside Camilla, while William continued the inquiry with Anne. The princess spoke carefully. She said the future king did not believe the queen had planned the unauthorized transfer, but he could not ignore one painful fact. Camilla had worn the ring without confirming its origin. Even after Anne had objected to the idea months earlier, Camilla lowered her voice and admitted what pride had hidden. She had wanted to believe Charles had chosen the ring for her. Years of acceptance had always seemed to arrive with an invisible condition, and the supposed gift felt like the first recognition that required no defense. Her need to belong had silenced the warning inside her. Charles then delivered the second blow. Another object from Elizabeth's private collection, a sealed ceremonial box used to preserve items linked to formal royal duties, had also been prepared for transfer into the Queen's household after dinner. The king explained that this was no isolated mistake. Someone had been building a pattern, surrounding Camilla with symbols of his mother's private authority, until each new possession appeared normal. Camilla understood the trap. Every object would have made her look more powerful, while every transfer would have weakened the line between service and inheritance. What looked like acceptance could have become the evidence used to destroy her. Charles opened his hand. Camilla removed the ring herself and placed it in his palm. She apologized without excuses. When the king closed his fingers around it, she turned away before he could see the tears she had fought all evening. Charles suspended every private collection privilege attached to her household until the review was complete. Camilla accepted the decision without protest, because resistance would only deepen the suspicion now surrounding her. Later that night, Anne found Camilla alone. The princess did not accuse her again. She simply asked the queen to walk with her, without staff, titles, or witnesses. The crisis had exposed every division between them, but the next conversation would determine whether those divisions became permanent. Long after Balmoral had fallen silent, Anne and Camilla stepped into a private sitting room, with no aides, no husbands, and no royal machinery to speak for them. The ring was gone. The anger remained. Yet for the first time that evening, neither woman was defending a title. Anne spoke as a daughter protecting her mother. Camilla answered as a wife who had spent years wondering whether acceptance would always remain just beyond her reach. Princess Anne began with the truth she believed had been buried beneath the argument. Queen Elizabeth's signet ring had never mattered because of gold, age, or rarity. Its value came from the private letters, approvals, and burdens connected to decades of service. A signet ring was a personal seal, used to confirm private authority. And for Anne, it carried the memory of decisions her mother had made, when no applause followed. Camilla did not challenge that meaning. She said she had never wanted to replace Elizabeth or claim her history. The supposed gift from Charles had seemed to end years of uncertainty. For once, the Queen believed she was being trusted with something deeper than ceremony. She believed the family had finally stopped measuring her place from a distance. Anne listened, but she refused to excuse the choice. She admitted that the family had often expected Camilla to serve, absorb criticism, and remain silent without openly recognizing the emotional cost. Still, pain did not erase responsibility. The restrictions had been known. The warning had already been given. Hope could explain the decision, but it could not make it right. Camilla then confessed what she had avoided all evening. She recognized the velvet case from the Windsor Memorial and still chose not to question it. This was not innocence. It was willful hope. She had seen the danger and accepted the ring because she wanted the message behind it to be true. Her voice broke as she admitted Anne had been right to stop the dinner. Camilla finally asked whether Anne would ever truly see her as family. The princess paused before answering. Family, she said, was not proved by wearing another woman's ring. It was proved by returning it when doing so wounded pride. Anne then disclosed through their private conversation that she had entered the dinner ready to demand Camilla's removal from every collection decision. After hearing the truth, she changed course. She would recommend joint guardianship, a shared system, placing Elizabeth's restricted possessions under her children and William, the future king. Camilla agreed to sign a private acknowledgement, accepting that the ring should never have been worn. She also surrendered any future personal claim to Elizabeth's protected objects. Anne offered no embrace and no easy forgiveness. She opened the door and asked Camilla to return with her to Charles. By morning, the family had reached a decision, but the secret had already escaped Balmoral. What began as a private reckoning between two women was about to become a public judgment on memory, legitimacy, and royal inheritance. At dawn, Britain awakened to a single image that transformed a private Balmoral confrontation into a national royal crisis. A photograph taken before the dinner showed Camilla lifting her hand in greeting, the late Queen's signet ring clearly visible beneath the lights. Within minutes, broadcasters froze the image, historians debated its meaning, and crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace. Yet the most damaging detail was not that Camilla had worn the ring. It was that Princess Anne had stopped the dinner because of it. The palace first confirmed only that a private family dinner had been shortened because of a household matter. That careful phrase meant an internal royal issue involving staff, family authority, or protected property. But the wording collapsed once the photograph spread across television screens and newspaper websites. The ring was clear. So was the fear behind the palace silence. Royal commentators quickly explained why Anne's reaction mattered. Crown property belonged to the monarchy as an institution and passed from one sovereign to the next. Elizabeth's privately restricted possessions were different. They remained tied to her personal wishes and family instructions. Camilla had not merely worn an old jewel. She had appeared to cross a boundary the late Queen had deliberately protected. One London newspaper captured the crisis in a single front page. Camilla's raised hand dominated the page beneath the headline, "Anne draws the line." Editors enlarged the ring inside a white circle, turning a tiny object into the symbol of a national argument about memory, power, and ambition. Outside Buckingham Palace, a small crowd gathered beside the gates. An elderly woman held a photograph of Elizabeth and told a live broadcaster, "Some things belong to history, not ambition." Her words spread almost as quickly as the image itself. Public opinion split immediately. Some believed Camilla had deliberately claimed Elizabeth's authority. Others saw the Queen as the victim of a senior official who had manipulated her deepest weakness, the need to feel fully accepted. Charles watched the coverage without speaking. The king understood the trap. Defending his wife without explaining the breach would damage public trust. Condemning her would abandon Camilla at the most humiliating moment of her life. The palace finally issued a firm written statement. It confirmed that the ring had been released without Charles's authorization, returned to protected custody, and permanently barred from being worn by any family member. The senior secretary resigned that morning. Anne and William were then placed in charge of a complete review of Elizabeth's private collection under a new joint approval system. By evening, the family gathered again at Balmoral. They were not there to resume dinner. They had returned to decide what the scandal would permanently mean for Camilla and the crown. The monarchy had survived the exposure, but only one final act could turn the ring from a symbol of destruction into a lesson the family would never forget. The following evening, the royal family returned to the same Balmoral dining room, where the crisis had erupted. The abandoned places had been reset, but no one pretended the gathering could simply continue. At the center of the table rested the sealed velvet case containing Queen Elizabeth's signet ring. This time, nobody wore it. Nobody claimed it. And before a single course was served, Camilla rose to say the words that would finally end the confrontation. King Charles had gathered Anne, William, Catherine, Edward, Sophie, and the Queen for one purpose: to record a united decision about Elizabeth's restricted legacy. Family guardianship meant that protected personal objects would now be controlled jointly by relatives, chosen to preserve the late monarch's wishes. The ring could be displayed for history, but it could never again be worn as a symbol of rank, succession, marriage, or personal status. Camilla spoke without excuses. She admitted that accepting the ring without asking Charles directly had been a serious failure of judgment. The Queen said her place beside the king must be earned through service, loyalty, and trust, not through symbols connected to another woman's reign. Charles listened closely, knowing that her words carried the humiliation of everything she had lost. Princess Anne accepted the acknowledgement. She confirmed that she did not believe Camilla had planned the unauthorized transfer, but she defended the decision to halt the dinner. Silence, she warned, would have turned a private violation into accepted precedent. The princess had not acted to destroy the Queen. She had acted to stop one broken rule from becoming permanent. Camilla closed the velvet case with both hands and passed it directly to Anne. The princess showed no triumph. She looked briefly toward Charles, then placed the case inside the custody box prepared by William. The future king sealed it, while Catherine watched the two women choose responsibility over resentment. Charles then announced the final reform. No household, spouse, secretary, or sovereign office would ever again reassign Elizabeth's protected possessions alone. Every transfer would require approval from the family guardians, creating a barrier against secrecy, pressure, and borrowed authority. Charles later spoke to Camilla in private. He said he understood why she wanted to believe the ring was his gift, but she must question anything that used his love as a shortcut around duty. The Queen promised she would never make that mistake again. The dinner resumed only after the case was removed. Elizabeth's memory had been protected. Camilla's role had been separated from borrowed symbolism. Charles's authority had been restored through truth rather than silence. The crown had forgiven human weakness, but it had drawn its final line. The past could guide the monarchy, yet it could never be quietly taken, rewritten, or worn as proof of belonging. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.